Welcome back to the shop here at Speedfire Fab. So glad y'all are here. We got an exciting one today. The OBS is running and driving. Engine's back together. One big step done. On to the rest of the little things. But stay tuned because today we're going to get the engine back up. All the little details wired, plumbed, back to running. Tweaking on the tune a little bit and all the problems that come with that. Then we're going to get the shop kind of rearranged and get the truck moved to work on the rest of the little details. So stay tuned. Thank y'all for being here. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get to work. All right, we're going to start by putting the down pipe back in. Really want to get this thing kind of sorted out before I go putting everything else together. And then this just gets in the way. I just have to remember how it goes in. Thought I could get it out. Thought I put it in. Thought I took it out with the O2 sensor on there, but maybe I did not. Probably took it out with the turbo off. Alright, I'm going to take the O2 sensor off. It'll be easier. Probably noticing that the down pipe is now wrapped. I'm going to have a separate video on that at a later date. But basically there was too much heat before. And I'm trying to calm that down a little bit. Now we're going to try to get all three of these hook the smoke machine up. See if we can't. Hopefully we don't make any smoke. I mean, we need to make smoke. Hopefully we don't let out any smoke. Well, I don't know about y'all. I don't have a lot of faith. We'll prove the point. Now we wait. I smell it. I don't see it. Nope, it's leaking over here. All right, well, the good news is that it's all flowing through all of this into the manifold and out the other side, and it's leaking on that V-band on the passenger side. Well, we got a little bit of a leak right there. It's leaking out of that? Jeez. We have already sorted out when it was on the engine stand. At least thought we did. It's not actually tight, so. All right, we're gonna send it. Everything's packed full of smoke. I guess now we'll finish putting the wiring harness back in. Get the intake on. Fix our fuel pressure wire that I cut on the bell housing. Time to fill it full of oil. See if it'll start. As soon as I can find the oil, I think it might still be in the truck. Should be about 6 quarts. Definitely don't want to forget this step on a fresh rebuild. You'll end up more pissed off at yourself than pinching the wires in the bell housing. So it's literally, I'm gonna say, it's 100% back together for startup. The only thing I really got left is to put the passenger fender on, and then of course headlights, bumper and grill, but I'm not worried about that right now. I'm not gonna put this fender on just yet because I want to change out these front shocks. That side ain't that big a deal to get to. This side, the exhaust is kind of in the way with the fender on. I've got to make a trip over to Arlington later. Anyways, I'm gonna run by Summit and get a couple shocks. And I'm just gonna go ahead and change those out before I put this front fender back in, but I don't have coolant in anything. I don't like starting fresh stuff with coolant in it just because it's not needed. And if you got to take it back apart, it's just more hassle. I do need to put some power steering fluid in though. If you notice the belt is on, normally when I start one up, I leave the belt off. Actually, I might just go ahead and take the belt off because then I won't have to put power steering fluid in. I'm not super worried about running the water pump dry for a few seconds. I really just want to spin this. I'm going to spin this thing over with the coil packs and injectors unplugged. Just build a little bit of oil pressure. Plug the coil packs in. I really just want to see it fire off. Try to idle. Hopefully everything sounds smooth, and then that's all I want to do. We ain't going to rev it up. We ain't going to do none of that. I say we're not going to rev it up. I might get it a little bit off idle if it is going to idle, and just to make sure there's no crazy noises. But we definitely ain't going to the moon. We ain't going anywhere near no rev limiters. None of that nonsense. I'm not going to try to put a tune. Well, I do have to put I got to adjust the tune a little bit because this cam's a little bit bigger. So I am going to do that. I don't think it will start with this cam that's in there. I might be wrong. Maybe I'll just try it. But I think the fueling's probably going to be way off. I don't know. The battery, it's got a draw somewhere. It sat here for a month and a half and the battery kind of drained. So I don't know that this thing will even hold a charge. It's been on the charger most of the morning. Hoping at least with the jump box I can get it to. Something wrong with the starter. Like it's trying to turn over since I put the battery cable on.
Oh, well, that's just fantastic.
So the starter has the power cable has a little nipple thing bent coming off the side of the, like you got your eyelet and then this little bent part that turns 90 degrees that kind of locks it. Well, it's pinching up against the start wire and I guess shorting out. That's great. So I guess it's a good thing that the battery is dead. It would have just kept trying to turn over. Before I do that, I guess I could show y'all what I'm talking about here. Definitely operator error. We're going in. You see the little nipple there? It's forcing its way into the try this again. Don't think the alarm's gonna go off because I don't think it's got enough juice. I would be wrong. All right, see if it's got enough juice to spin it over. Light's pretty dim. I'm gonna say no. Nope, just shut itself off. Which means, I guess while I'm going to town, I'm gonna try to warranty that battery. 6.7 volts. Prime the fuel a little bit. Uh-oh, got a leak. Might have forgotten to tighten the fuel rail fitting. All right, we got the injectors disconnected. We got the coil packs disconnected. That's gonna allow us just to spin it over without, we don't wanna be dumping fuel with no spark because it's gonna wash out the cylinders and eventually work its way into the oil. We don't want the extra strain on trying to spark with no fuel, and we don't want it to start because we want to build a little bit of oil pressure. All right, it started building a little bit. Let's see if she'll fire off. All right, here goes nothing. Pounds of oil pressure. It's idling about 1100, but man, that sounds really good. Got a little bit of lifter, not necessarily lifter tick, but all right, it's another day in the shop. Went to Summit yesterday, got us a new set of front and rear shocks. It's gonna be easier, I think, to do the shocks on the 2-post lift. So what I'm gonna focus on right now is we got a few mechanical things to finish up. To make sure all my radiator hoses and coolant hoses are tight. We're going to get coolant put in it, power steering fluid in it, put the belt on. We want to snug down the bolts on the core support. I'm going to leave this fender off because, again, it's going to be much easier to get the new shock in over here. I've also got hose and fittings on the way for AC, which is going to be a lot easier to do with this fender off because I'm trying to make things clean, so my AC fittings are going to go down, which means I'll need to get up under here and it'll just be easier. So I'm going to leave the fender off for now. Mechanically wise, it is pretty much, I'm not going to say dialed in because I got to get it all tuned, but it's definitely put back together. Really the only thing I need to do is figure out a place for the transmission dipstick. If you remember, I had it bolted right here. The problem is you can't fill when it's parallel with the ground like that. It needs to be on the firewall or something, so I'll sort that out. but it should run and drive. So my plan is to get coolant in it, power steering fluid, belt back on it. Get the coolant kind of burped out and make sure it doesn't overheat. And then I've got to clean all this mess up. Move the mower and the forklift and the Scout and the fan and engine blocks and everything. And we're going to get it off this lift and over there onto that one. So I can get the shocks off of it, start changing that. I need to pull the rear end apart and get me a parts list of what exactly I need. All right, I gotta get the key for the stupid alarm. Y'all ready? Oh, she dead. Nice. Four volts. Here we go. All right, let's see if it'll start. I think I might need to change the battery cable or a little bit bigger one or something for this. It always wants to click, like not engage. I don't have a battery charger. All I have is this little trickle charger. I'm not sure it's as much of a low voltage starter issue as it is just a low voltage. The ECU is not happy with putting out full voltage, I guess. See if we can cheat it. I think what I screwed up on is I didn't listen to the instructions, and I put the main. I got a big battery cable from the battery straight to the starter, and then I got one from that same starter post up to the ECU, which instructions said do not do. I did it. I got a feeling that's what most of this starting problem is. what we're going to do is we're going to get the jumper cables. And we're going to make a new cable, temporary new cable. Make a new cable from our battery. Preferably without touching the ground. We're going to see if that solves our problems. And if it does, then I just got to reroute the battery cable, which ain't no big deal. New plan. Got another battery over here. Really? I don't understand why this thing is like this. Alright, I'm getting all kinds of codes in here. I guess I'm gonna have to move some of this junk around and get the Scout, or I wonder if I can reach the Scout from here. Alright, it's gonna get a little loud. Really starting to get annoying. The exhaust is too hot to get my hand in there to put the external jump button on. with the gloves so I don't burn myself and I can't feel and get in there. Might be it though. I reset the tune, now I gotta mess with that. I think the fuel is off. It's not that off. Jeez. 2 batteries, an alternator, and a jump box. And a battery tender. It's a little wild. 13.2 volts. Drops to 5 when I do that. All right, I took the battery out the Scout. All right, so got a fresh tune-up in there based on the slightly larger cam, slightly larger displacement of the engine. Again, I really don't know what I'm doing here, but I do know that it's got too much fuel in these cells right here. I'm basically just kind of bumping them up. got it to idle. Sounds pretty good. A nice little mild chop to it. I'm sure once that's properly tuned, it'll change a little bit, probably smooth out. Running smooth, it's quiet. We're idling about 750, which is pretty much what I got it set at. I had to adjust the base idle map and then a little bit of fine tuning on the fuel. Had to take a little bit of fuel out of it. It's really not that bad. It doesn't fall back down very well, but again, it's good enough for me to move it. Final tuning can sort that out. So if you're running a 200-degree coolant temp, I think I got the air pocket out of it. Fuel pressure's about 60. Oil pressure's a little bit low, but it goes up to 40. 23 at idle. Not sure why the intake temp is showing 14 degrees. Have to work on that. But now I gotta clean all this mess up. Probably just gonna push the Scout out the door. And when I get this truck back over there on that lift, I'll pull the battery out and move all that. But first step is clean this mess up. We also have a new problem. The key is not turning off the engine or the ECU or anything. because the throttle's not working because I had to unplug it because it was sitting there clicking even after everything was rebooted. There we go. They're not great, but they're there. Keys in my hand. It's not too good. We must have some kind of power bleeding over somewhere. Question is where? Still got a little bit of a fuel leak. The only way I can shut it down is reboot it through the computer. But there's still power going to everything. It's like the key is just a temporary. Like the key kills everything in here minus the dash. But it's straight up, everything is still on. All right, someone has to figure that out. It's actually set up where once the engine's running, if you just bump the key to start, it will kill the engine. The problem is it's not killing the ignition, like the dash is still on in here.
We got a wire somewhere bleeding through a relay, or who knows. We're gonna have to troubleshoot that. The good news is it's running, it's idling, it's not overheating. Still got a fuel leak. Now when the AC parts get here, put the shocks and stuff on, get the AC parts, build the AC lines, like put the fender back in, rebuild the rear end. So that's gonna be it for today's episode. I accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish for the most part. We got it running. We got it off the lift, 4-post lift over here, ready to put on the 2-post lift. So start fine tuning some of the things. And the next video, I'm not real sure. We're gonna do something. It kind of depends on if rear end parts or AC parts or whatever shows up first. We'll see. But it's running, it's driving. We got a few bugs and kinks to work out. Time to throw the wrench in and explain my crazy plan. So, you know, if you've been watching since the beginning, the goal was to throw this thing together in a few months, get it to Texas LS Fest, which we accomplished. But the original goal was to drive it to LS Fest, and that did not happen because we got down to the wire, didn't have time to tune it. And then I went and blew it up, and we had to kind of start over. So we're going on a little redemption run since I didn't get to drive it to LS Fest. So we're gonna go back to LS Fest, but we're gonna drive it to LS Fest East in Bowling Green, Kentucky at Beach Bend Raceway, which is the second weekend of September. I can't remember exactly, let's see, I think it's about 800 miles, 787 miles from my house. But that's not all. 787 miles from my house. And we're planning to leave on September 1st to give us a full week to get there, and me and the wife want to see some things along the way. That means we have 36 days, which I'm more than confident I can get the rest of this put together in 10 days tops, and then we'll get it tuned, which I've got a couple ideas. I don't have nothing hard set in stone yet, but we've got some plans, so I'm not too worried about that either. Provided it makes it on the dyno and drives off the dyno, I guess. There's always that. But the plan is we're going to LS Fest East. I think it's like September 6th. 5th and 6th, 7th, maybe something like that. I don't know. I have to look it up, but that's our plan. But I'm also supposed to be in Chicago for the FabTech trade show the weekend after LS Fest. Chicago is about a 6-hour drive from Bowling Green. So we're gonna get this thing thrown together. We're gonna load up a bunch of tools, a bunch of parts, suitcases. We're gonna jump in and drive 800 miles over the course of a couple days as we make our way up to Bowling Green. We're gonna hang out at LS Fest for a few days, which I'm super excited about because they have off-road racing and Ultra 4 and trophy trucks and all kinds of stuff like that, which is my favorite thing. And then we're gonna jump back in the truck and we're gonna cruise up to Chicago, go to FabTech a couple days. My wife's got a friend she wants to see up in Madison, Wisconsin. So we're gonna add a few hours and go up north. And then we're gonna make a trek back down, and we don't really know what states we're gonna go through, but it'd probably be 9 or 10 states total, probably close to 3,000 mile road trip. In this completely untested 1990 OBS GMC with 200,000 miles on the chassis, suspension, body, and 200,000 miles on the short block 6.2, and probably a couple hundred miles, hopefully, and get it tuned and put a couple hundred miles testing around here on all the new stuff. But again, I plan to load up to bed with tools and parts and We will figure it out along the way, repair what we have to repair, hit it one day at a time and see what happens. And I plan to record most of it so y'all can follow along and join us on our crazy road trip. So yeah, that's the crazy plan. Like I said, I'm pretty confident we're gonna get there, but we'll see what happens. Thank y'all for tuning in. Hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next one when we dive back further into this thing and do some of the finishing touches. Y'all have a good one.